Up on Network Africa. South Africa secures 20 million vaccine doses, closes its land borders to curb the spread of COVID-19. Egypt to reopen its airspace to Qatari flights following the resumption of diplomatic relations. Plus, the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel warns of growing insecurity that's prevalent in the region. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I'm Layo Adegoke. South Africa has secured 20 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine as it sets out to begin the rollout of its vaccination program, beginning with health workers this month. Now, this was part of the announcements made last night as President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation amid the rise in COVID-19 cases and related deaths in the country. The number of confirmed cases in the country so far is over 1.2 million, while the number of deaths nationwide currently stands at 33,579. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia tells us more.
We are now in the center of that storm.
And the storm leaves in its wake 190,000 new COVID-19 cases and 4,600 deaths just this year alone. Infection numbers are still growing and thousands are admitted in hospitals which are barely coping. The president appealed once more for adherence to health safety regulations.
I would like to take a moment to specifically address the issue of funerals, which have consistently been identified time and time again as so-called super spreader events or super spreader moments. Many of those who are now passing away were infected at funerals. Let us pay heed to this.
While the health system struggles to cope with the added pressure, President Cyril Ramaphosa gave the nation an update on expected anti-COVID-19 vaccines. He also had a word for vaccine rollout critics and cynics.
We have to date secured 20 million doses to be delivered mainly in the course of the year and substantial amount of it in the first half of the year. There are still some in our country who are skeptical, and there is much disinformation and conspiracy theories that are being spread around about COVID-19 vaccines. As we work to secure the supply of sufficient doses in the midst of huge global demand, we are doing and will continue to do everything that's possible to ensure that the process is both transparent and it's handled most effectively and efficiently.
For now, the revised risk-adjusted Level 3 restrictions remain in place. The sale of alcohol is still banned. What has changed is that curfew is now from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. 20 land border posts, including the 6 busiest, like Beit Bridge between South Africa and Zimbabwe, have now been closed till the 15th of February following the recent congestion recorded. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
While still in South Africa, Minister in the Presidency Jackson Mthembu has become the 4th member of the executive to test positive for coronavirus. The presidency says Mr. Mthembu was tested on Monday after displaying symptoms. He has now gone into quarantine along with everyone who came in close contact with him. Earlier, the country recorded 15,046 new cases and 416 deaths, bringing the total cases to above 1.2 million. Well, health authorities in Mozambique say that samples collected to ascertain the presence of the new coronavirus variant have tested negative. Now, the samples were collected randomly across the country. The National Director for Health, Survey and Observation at the National Institute of Health, Sergio Chichumbe, adds that the first batch had negative results and he hopes it would be the case in the next batches. The country is at risk due to its proximity to neighboring South Africa that has the new variant. Well, Malawi's local government minister, Linksine Belekanyama, has died after contracting COVID-19. Information Minister Gospel Kazako, who mourned his death, says he was a true patriot. Mr. Belekanyama was diagnosed with COVID-19 2 weeks ago. Now, the country has 9,027 confirmed cases of coronavirus, including 235 deaths. The World Health Organization's Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, is asking for a collective commitment to begin vaccinating health workers and all those that are at high risk in all countries of the world within the next 100 days. While speaking to reporters in Geneva, Dr. Tedros says the WHO is also working towards tracing the origin of the pandemic.
Next week, at the WHO Executive Board, I will be encouraging all countries to fulfill their pledges to COVAX. I call for a collective commitment so that within the next 100 days, vaccination for health workers and those at high risk in all countries are underway. Governments, manufacturers, civil society, religious and community leaders must come together to create the greatest mass mobilization in history for equitable. Just as we look forward on research and rolling out vaccines, we continue work on the origins. We're pleased that an international team of scientists, distinguished experts from 10 institutions and countries are commencing their travel to China to engage in and review scientific research with their Chinese counterparts on the origins of the virus.
Well, hospitals in Senegal are under pressure, even as COVID-19 infections surge in the country. The country is preparing its vaccine strategy and is rushing to deliver more beds for coronavirus patients. Health officials say a lack of capacity means doctors are only able to admit the most severe cases.
A second wave of new infections and deaths hit record highs this month in Senegal, forcing President Macky Sall to reimpose a state of emergency that bans gatherings, enforces mask wearing, and imposes a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Doctors are hoping this will buy the country enough time to install new facilities and open health centers that were active during the first wave last year, but were shut as cases dropped in the summer. In Dakar, intensive care beds sit in a fenced-off medical complex away from the public eye. In one single-story building set aside from the rest, patients in sparse rooms struggle for breath, aided by oxygen and visits from a small team of nurses who track their progress.
We are a bit worried when we are here, because every day there is fear, there is panic. However, we are more concerned for our families than ourselves, because here we can take all the proper measures, but once we are at home, we are afraid to infect our families and our children.
Senegal is awaiting vaccines through the World Health Organization-backed Global COVAX scheme. This program is helping to finance deliveries to 92 developing nations with limited or no means to buy vaccines on their own.
Senegal is part of the COVAX initiative, but the president says it's very good. Continue to do that. But he wants to give the country an additional, even complementary opportunity in allowing us to acquire for ourselves other vaccines using our national initiative. in addition to COVAX.
The country is also trying to acquire coronavirus vaccines to complement those it will get through the COVAX scheme, but it does not have the capacity to store vitals at ultra-low temperatures, limiting its vaccine options. At the Fan Hospital, technicians are installing new walk-in COVID rooms, but for now, the lack of deep refrigeration limits the country's options. Nearby, a multi-story clinic with 70 rooms has been built and in March will start receiving COVID patients in a ward with an air purifying system and ventilators. In all, the country has more than 40 treatment centers, 60 intensive care beds, and 300 health workers trained to deal with COVID patients.
Egypt has announced plans to reopen its airspace to Qatari flights following the resumption of relations after a summit in Saudi Arabia. Civil Aviation Authority Chief Ashraf Noah says the Egyptian government has officially lifted the ban on Qatari flights. The Gulf Cooperation Council and Egypt signed an agreement on January 5th that effectively restored those ties with Qatar. So far, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have announced the reopening of their airspace to Qatari flights. Well, let's get more on this story from the VOA's Edward Yeranian joining us from Cairo. Hello, Edward. Good to see you. Thank you for speaking to us. How are Egyptians reacting to, the reopening of the country's airspace to Qatari flights?
Yes, Layo, some people, some Egyptians are pleased by the move, and understandably, some Egyptians are displeased by the move. The Qataris are close to the Muslim Brotherhood group, which is not very well thought of by many people in Egypt. And of course, there are people that either belong to the group or sympathize with it, and they would normally think well of it. I mean, I've heard people tell me both things, that they were pleased, and people that they were angry about the move. Also, of course, if you have family in Qatar, if you have family members that are working in Qatar, or if you have, some kind of business interest, it's in your interest to be able to fly there. So this should make the situation easier for some people. So I think it's not there aren't a lot of people that are very angry, but some people are angry. And of course, as I said, some people are pleased.
Now, almost 4 years ago, 2017 precisely, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt they all cut diplomatic trade and travel ties with Qatar over accusation that it sponsored terrorism. What impact has this had on regional security in the last 4 years?
Well, if you hear some of the media organizations explain the situation, you would understand, or you would hear that it's been very bad for regional security. I guess it depends on whose security you're talking about. If you talk about the Western countries like Britain and the United States that have military interests in Qatar, the U.S. has an air base there. If you talk about Turkey, which has a base there, those countries obviously would be upset because it is a hindrance not to be able to fly to Egypt and the other Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the Emirates. So this would be the noise you'd be hearing in the media. But at the same time, Qatar does support a lot of governments, groups that regional states find reprehensible. And so that's an even bigger threat to their security from their standpoint. So I guess you can make the argument both ways.
All right, then. Thank you so much. VOA's Edward Yeranian, thank you for speaking to us.
My pleasure, Lio.
Still ahead on the program. Military personnel raid the home of Ugandan opposition presidential candidate Bobi Wine ahead of Thursday's general elections. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We're keeping our eyes on what is happening in Uganda, even as the country prepares for its election. The opposition candidate Bobi Wine says that soldiers have raided his home today and arrested his security guards. Now, this comes 2 days before an election, pitting the singer-turned-lawmaker against one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. Bobi Wine also says that one of his drivers had been shot by the military on Monday night and died this morning. The opposition presidential candidate is asking Ugandans to turn out and vote by staying at polling stations and also observe counting afterwards on January 14th.
Last night, one of our team members, my driver sometimes and works mainly as a mechanic, Iwan Katerega, was shot by the military and he passed away this morning. And again this morning, my house was raided. 2 of my gardeners were taken away, and my security guard was beaten very, very badly. We are therefore adding our voices together to call upon all of you fellow Ugandans to turn up in large numbers and vote. By now, all voters have made up their mind. By now, we know all voters know who they want to vote for. But most importantly, we are convinced that all voters in Uganda would want a better Uganda, a peacefully changing Uganda.
Well, back here in Nigeria, the Nigerian Navy Bearcraft and NNS Way have witnessed some infrastructure upgrade in order to strengthen its operational activities and enhance the welfare of its personnel. The flag officer commanding the Western Naval Command, Rear Admiral Oladele Daji, while delivering the message of the Chief of Naval Staff at the occasion, paid tribute to personnel who have paid the supreme price with their lives in the cause of duty.
It's a gathering of state security chiefs at NNS Bearcraft at the Western Naval Command, Apapa, Lagos. They are yet to be part of the latest addition by the Navy to boost its infrastructure base, enhance operations, and secure not just the maritime space, but also monitor activities at the waterfront. An automated main access gate, a 200-seat pavilion at the parade ground, and the CCTV are all parts of the latest assets in the base.
Only this one works. It covers most of where the cameras are within this area. This one is meant for patrol. You can see now, if it zooms, you can see up to, look at Lagos Island, look at Federal Palace, all you can see. If this tanker is not there, you can see even Dr. from here.
Similar infrastructure upgrade at the NNS Way or Job Barracks has taken into cognizance the challenges of accommodation for personnel. Set to be deployed for usage are 2 blocks consisting of 74 self-contained of transit accommodation as a quick impact project to address the acute shortage of residents for junior ratings drafted to various units in Lagos. The flag officer of the Western Naval Command, Rear Admiral Oladele Daji, while delivering the message of the Chief of Naval Staff, seized the opportunity to pay a glowing tribute to personnel, some of whom have paid the supreme price in the line of duty.
As far as the Nigerian Navy is concerned, it's not just rhetorics, but also translated into the catering for the families of fallen heroes across the length and breadth of all establishments in the Navy, and not just on the Armed Forces Remembrance Week or Remembrance Day, but at all times.
By this gesture, Nigerians will expect that personnel who have been offered improved welfare will give their best in tackling increasing crime rates. Chris Elems, Channels Television News.
The head of the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel, Mohamed Ibn Chambers, has warned that security continues to prevail and to harm innocent lives in West Africa and the Sahel region. He made this statement while briefing the Security Council on the latest report of the Secretary General on the activities of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel.
Yet, insecurity continues to prevail and to harm innocent lives. After the end of the rainy season, militants have again staged audacious and deadly attacks, notably in Niger, where more than 100 people died in just one assault 9 days ago. Despite important successes, insecurity has expanded to new areas previously considered safe havens, where, like in northern Nigeria, northwest Nigeria, militants collude with bandits and other criminal networks. As a result of prevailing insecurity, the humanitarian situation has further aggravated, triggering new population displacements and reaching a cumulative figure of 5 million people, which is 1.4 million higher than in 2019. Behind these figures are millions of human lives that are devastated and hundreds of thousands of children who are deprived of life-changing education. I urge all national actors to overcome personal grievances and to make gestures of genuine reconciliation, to leave behind the long shadows of the past and turn a decisive page towards a united, prosperous Côte d'Ivoire.
The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has warned that new swarms of locusts in southern Ethiopia and northern Kenya are spreading further in the Eastern Africa region. In its latest update posted on Monday, FAO says the immature swarms have been migrating from the previous locust breeding grounds in eastern Ethiopia and central Somalia and spreading into Ethiopia's SNNP region and into Kenya's northern and coastal counties. The body is also warning that a few swarms could spread further in Kenya and reach Tanzania, South Sudan and Uganda this month. Locust invasion poses a big threat to food security in the region. Last year, the region saw billions of the insects destroying crops across the region. And that's where we end Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.